I just wanted to be a kid. My mom's immigrant guilt ruined my childhood, by user Corto_Prince. My mom and I immigrated to the US in 1997. She met my stepdad through an international dating service. My life in American was never hard, so to speak. My mom always told me and my sister growing up that times were tough. As a kid I never knew what it meant. My childhood was filled with the word no. As a kid you're gonna want toys and to go do things with friends. My mom always said no. And if I asked my stepdad, all he would say was, "Go ask your mama." Which always lead to a no. Now I'll say this, I was never starved, I was given what I was needed growing up. But it was always bottom of the barrel. I remember I asked my mom for a pair of Nikes once. And I really mean once. They were $65.99 and my mom looked at me and said, "You're so greedy, you are so ungrateful for what you have, your family back home could never afford nice shoes like that, don't ever ask me for shoes like that again." Until I got my first job I wore Walmart and Kmart. My mom had it drilled into my head that me asking for things that any kid would ask for was wrong. That the family back home had it so bad that I would be doing them an injustice for having clothes or toys or video games when they couldn't. A side note that is important. When I came to American initially my mom and stepdad did not want me to start school a year late. So I brain dumped Spanish and learned English. It was not until last year, 2022, that I really started taking initiative to learn Spanish. Also a side note about my parents. They have separate bank accounts. My stepdad claims that his money is his and my mom money is hers. This will become relevant. Also my mom would never pay for a ticket for me to visit our home country. Because she said it was too expensive and that I didn't speak Spanish anyway. I got to the point to where I was very fluent in conversational Spanish. My original plan was to surprise my mom. I practiced by getting in touch with family members back in our home country. I was talking to one of my cousins, and I asked her how her day was. She said it was okay but she was waiting for the wire from my mom. At first, I thought that was some sort of slang that I was not familiar with, so I asked her to clarify what she meant. She then tells me that she was waiting for my mom to send $800 down to them, that they were waiting at a Western Union for her MoneyGram to come in. At first I am thinking something is wrong. I offer to help. My cousin says no, your mom does this every month. I asked again if something was wrong. My cousin said no, so then I asked how long has my mom been doing this. She said since 1999. I asked her, is it always $800? My cousin explains that every month is a little different but it's always been $600 a month. I said all right and called my mom. I told her that our cousin told me about the money you've been sending down there every month since 1999. She said yeah, it's for your grandmother medicines. I called her out. No, it's not. You send them money because you feel guilty about living in America and they can't. So you send them money every month and they spend it on the same things you have told me I wasn't allowed to have because I was greedy. I told her that during that conversation I asked my cousin what type of clothes and shoes they wear. They said all the name brands that I was never allowed to look at. They took vacations on my mom's dime to Brazil, Peru, and Puerto Rico. While I missed every single school field trip that required money. I got a job at 14 so I could help with groceries and buy my own clothes because I felt that I was costing my mom too much money. I explained that according to them she would send at least $600 a month down there. That would mean she has sent over $170K. I told her she could have helped me and my sister get through college, but instead we had to take the student loan route. I asked her this question, is the reason you never bought me and my sister tickets to go visit was because you didn't want us to see the truth? Her reply, I brought you to America, you had it better than all of them, you're just ungrateful. I said, no, I just don't feel guilty about being here. If they really wanted to come here they should have used the $170K you sent them. If you have made it this far you might be wondering, where is my stepdad in all this? His belief is, if the conversation is about money that is not his, then it's not his problem. It was never about the clothes or the shoes. I just felt so betrayed because I wanted to experience what other kids around me experienced. Not everything but some things. As a kid I was made to feel terrible for wanting anything because I supposedly had it better. I handed my mom my paychecks for years thinking times were just too tough. Just to find out that I had nothing to feel guilty about. I feel like my childhood was taken away from me, because I wanted all the things a normal kid asked for. My mother is upset I don't want my stepdad in my child's life or mine, by user anonymous girl 309. For context, my stepdad was very mean to me during childhood. I remember one night I wasn't hungry and I was suffering with an eating disorder. He told me he didn't care I was struggle with Ed, and he tells me that he'll beat me if I didn't eat. He mistreated me my whole childhood and my mother allowed it. He would call me slurs BC of my autism and make fun of me for being bipolar. He would purposely do things to make me angry and provoke me. My mother did this too, and then I'd get in trouble and they'd tell me I was crazy. He would punch me and pull my hair. One day he threatened, and my mom did too, to shave my head BC I had a bad attitude. My sister and brothers were the golden kids and I was treated like nothing. Now fast forward. I am having my baby this week and I told my mother the boundaries. She wants to send pictures of the baby I will be sending to her to my stepdad. I told her I was uncomfortable with that. She asked if I could leave her over at her house to babysit. I told her I don't trust her husband around my daughter. I was told I was selfish and acting angry. I told her she could come to my apartment to babysit. She tells me that I was ungrateful and that he was the only dad I ever had. I told her that if she can't follow my rules and boundaries, this goes for everyone, then they will not see my child. My mother told me I am your mother and you should show husband respect. It's in the past and you should let it go. He is my husband and has every right to see his grandchild. That's when I got upset and started to limit contact. Edit, I also have a community called Parents Breaking Kickles. It's for people to share their experiences from their childhood and how they will do better for their kids. It's a safe place to talk about parenting etc. Also another edit, my mom has talked to me about these things and she has apologized for everything in my childhood and it's trying to make amends. She is trying to mend our relationship and I see her effort. She has started showing up for me more. She has shown that she legitimately feels bad about everything she has done. She had also apologized for recent events. I'm sorry I didn't put this in the text earlier. Maybe everyone will have more context. Another edit, my stepdad is not in my life at all. I haven't seen or talked to him in God knows how long. My mill tried to stop my wife's life-saving treatments, by user Bunsen. Allow me to introduce you to my late mother-in-law. I'll call her Carol, for the sake of variety. Though I've heard many stories about her, for the most part I'll stick with things that I witnessed myself. There are enough of them. I don't think Carol ever met a New Age concept that she didn't like. Her expressed goal was to synthesize all religion, science, and mysticism into a unified whole. All of it. To this end, she amassed a large collection of books and stranger objects from her travels, with an especial focus on healing. Her library had volumes about vibration manipulation, curative trampolining, homeopathic color therapy, and on and on. I am not joking or exaggerating here. Her shelves had lots of admittedly pretty mineral crystals, along with bottles of magic goddess essence water, evaporated away, and bogus radon protectors powered by diagrams of geometric figures. Her favorite book, based on the number of annotations and sticky notes, was hundreds of pages of word salad about spiritual beings from the star Arcturus. That's Arcturus spelled with an H, because of h-bar, Planck's constant from physics. Except that Planck's constant is denoted by h, and h-bar, is the reduced Planck's constant. It's important to get the details right when you're dealing with spiritual beings. Her pentagonal home was custom built around an energy vortex that she discovered in the coastal peaks of British Columbia. Carol's parenting was, how shall I put this? More darkly eccentric. She was physically and emotionally abusive to her children. One still has some pencil lead embedded in his hand, from when she stabbed him because she wasn't satisfied with his piano practice. She attacked one with a kitchen knife. She started slut-shaming her daughter, later my wife, as soon as she grew breasts, growing breasts. So she forced her daughter to wear 2 large bathing suits, with the apparent intention of making said breasts look smaller by contrast, but with the actual effect that there were wardrobe malfunctions. She was ashamed that her daughter went into medicine and became a noted specialist, rather than supporting her own non-traditional medical work. My wife got the hell out at age 17, and moved across the country to go to university. For most of the time after that, she went relatively low contact. A decade ago, my wife suffered from a surgical error which resulted in abdominal sepsis, and asked me to call her mother. That made me understand just how deathly serious the situation was. I was to call in the family for what might be the last time. I hadn't grasped that her life was truly at risk until that point. Nothing less would have induced her to try to get her mother to visit. To her credit, Carol hurried out, for what was supposed to be a couple of weeks. It was expected that in that time, my wife would be either dead or on the road to recovery. Carol stayed in our home, and at first things didn't go too badly. For the most part, we just didn't talk about the treatments that my wife was undergoing. Carol did express concern about the antibiotics that were being given, since according to her own views, antibiotics did nothing but harm. But a couple of weeks stretched into a couple of months, and Carol became harder to live with. She was angry when I stroked my wife's hair with my hand, because I was blocking the energy from her chakra. She started blaming me for having somehow caused the nausea that the botched surgery was supposed to cure. I drove her out to pick up a magical concoction of essential oils, on the condition that she check with one of the doctors before applying them. I pointed out that if the mixture had the power to heal, then it also had the power to cause harm, which Carol denied. When we got back to the hospital, I nabbed one of the residents when we reached my wife's floor, to ask about that. Carol became furious about that, and it was clear that she had had no intention of talking with the doctors. At home, she became more abusive to me. She was claiming that I was abusing my wife by not letting her have her things in the house. At that point, I lost my temper, the first time I'd yelled at a person in literally a couple of decades. I told her that almost everything in sight was actually her daughter's, displacing my stuff, the sofas, the piano, tables and chairs, the bookshelves, and the electronics. The shelves for the CDs and DVDs were mine, but half the contents were hers. Carol wanted to know if I'd be continuing the herbal remedies after she left, and I told her that that was up to my wife. I'd continue them if she wanted, I'd stop them if she preferred. Carol screamed that I was abusing my wife by following her own wishes rather than her mother's. On the night before Carol was finally supposed to be heading out, I was restless. That particular nightmare was about to end, but my wife was still quite ill. I got to thinking about that essential oil mixture, which included both oil of cloves and oil of cinnamon. Those are both strongly irritating if left on the skin, and Carol had been painting my wife's feet with the stuff. Her feet were, apparently, the correct energy points to draw out the infection. I went online and found the manufacturer's instructions, which specified that the oil needed to be significantly diluted with some neutral oil if it was going to be applied to the skin. Carol hadn't even been using the stuff properly. Well, that explained why the skin on my wife's feet was yellow and starting to peel. But Carol was furious when I calmly pointed out the problems that she was creating, out of ignorance. A few days after Carol left, my wife took a turn for the worse and had to go back into the intensive care unit. And I dreaded the phone call that I had to make, not because of the bad news, but because I anticipated how Carol would react. And she didn't disappoint. If you really loved her, you'd put her back onto the herbal oil and stop the antibiotics. You know perfectly well they don't do a damn lick of good. At which point, I hung up. I had other things to worry about. My wife pulled through, after months in hospital and 3 stays in ICU. She's still in poor health. I told her that I was putting my foot down, under no circumstances was her mother welcome under my roof again. She had grossly abused her privileges as a house guest. I didn't care about the family custom that family members were always welcome to stay as guests. I would not stay under the same roof as her mother. Having heard my stories, and based on her own experiences, my wife agreed. A few years ago, Carol died, much as she had lived. She was diagnosed with metastasized lung cancer. Although she did undergo some real medical therapies, she relied mostly on her quack remedies, pawpaw twig powder, whey protein immune boosters, and the usual crap that ethics-free swindlers pawn off on desperate sufferers. She firmly believed that all the little white spots on her lung x-rays were a good sign, and that her rapid weight loss indicated that her boosters were draining the cancer away. If there's some existence after death, I hope she came to appreciate all of the harm that she did in life. Except, a couple of nights after she passed away, I was driving from the hospital back to the Energy Vortex house. The rental car's navigation device suggested a shorter route than I'd taken to get there. But that route turned into a back road, into a rough road in the hills, into a track through the forest, and, in pitch darkness apart from my headlights, over a rocky bump and directly into a tree trunk. Luckily, I was traveling slowly, and stopped in time. As I paused, shaken, I got to wondering if there might be something to Carol's worldview after all, and if her vengeful spirit might have possessed the GPS device, making one last try at killing me. My mom is harassing me to take a pregnancy test just because I gained a little bit of belly weight this past month, by user particular_cup 4377. I'm 18 years old. She treats me like a baby. I had to expose my sex life to her, and those topics make me really uncomfortable to talk about with my parents. I feel so uncomfortable and I want to get off my skin. She keeps saying she thinks I'm pregnant even though I know I'm not. She keeps telling me to get off the pill and asking me questions that I don't feel comfortable answering about my cycle and my body. Thing is, I have a brother and she never even touched on the subject of sex with him, while with me she says she doesn't trust me and thinks I'll get pregnant. Now I have to take a pregnancy test in front of her because she demanded it. I feel so disgusted and angry at her. But at the same time, she pays so much stuff for me I feel bad not doing what she wants and giving her the information she's asking, but I tell her I feel uncomfortable and she still insists on the subjects. Mom is not allowing me for a girls' trip, by user dare_not. So I'm 24, working a full-time job, staying in my parents' house as I'm working from home and support my family financially. My mother is a bit orthodox. So I cleared a job interview recently getting a much bigger paycheck. I worked pretty hard for this interview. Honestly, I don't have much friends except my best friend. I have been giving interviews for 3 months and put my all effort in interviews during this period. I wanted to go on a vacation on weekends with my girl best friend this week. But just when I tell my parents that I wanted to go on a trip, my mother started yell8ng, calling names and said to move out completely if I go on that trip. Adding more to the context. I am 24, and my brother is 25. He's staying in Oman, and we are from India. So from when I got this job, I give 1/3 of my salary to my family. They are using this money for sustenance. I have no problem related to that. But my brother also gives some amount from his income, but my parents do not use it and keep it in bank for his future. Their explanation for that is he's staying outside, we cannot spend his money. But he's having pretty luxurious life where he's staying. When I mentioned to my family about my next job and bigger paychecks, the question my mom asked instantly, how much more money I will be giving when I get the salary. Honestly, growing up, I always felt my brother got more support for his studies than me. Me on the other hand did everything I could to get scholarships, giving tuition for pocket money. And still now whenever I buy things for myself with my own money, my mother get upset.